I thought that the best thing that I can do for today is to give you the list of 7 mutual funds that you should invest in. No, I'm kidding. This will not be anything about personal finance. While I create a lot of content around personal finance, I thought that the best thing that I can leave you with, which is the topic of today as well, and that is the art of relying on yourself. Because very often in the chase of what we want to do with our lives, whether it's chasing money, whether it's chasing fame or status or glory, we tend to lose the most important relationship that we ought to have, and that is with our own selves. And the way that I will do that is I'll share a deeply personal story, which is not very old. It's only about 5 years old. And it's something that I've never shared on stage before, so all of you get to hear it for the first time. It's something that I'm immensely proud of because it shaped us up as a family and me as an individual in many meaningful ways. And through that, I will leave you with what, in my opinion, is the art of relying on yourself, because it has 3 components, because everything in life that is important always has 3 things. So I'm going to very quickly tell you about myself to set that context. I grew up in Delhi. We belong to a very middle-class family. My dad was a sales and marketing professional in the pharma industry. Mom was a primary school teacher in a local school. I have a younger sister who's 6 years younger to me. We grew up in, as most of us would have been, in a very middle-class 1980s, 1990s India household. And the struggle was real, as you would all know. There was some sort of financial debt almost always on our head. We always wanted to break away from the curse of middle-classness, whatever you may call that. And I had very strong ambitions for my life, which didn't pan out the way that I thought. I wanted to become a space scientist. This is before Elon Musk made it really cool. I fell in love with sciences. How many engineers in the house? Yeah, I hated engineers. I was like, engineers sold their soul. They went on to make money. I wanted to devote myself to pure sciences. And I was like, I'll go to the US and do all of that. But I dropped out of my PhD program, came back to India, and at the age of 24, I had to reset my life all over again. And I navigated through that. I became an entrepreneur in 2009. I've been in the startup industry for nearly 16 years, seen how this country has completely transformed when it comes to entrepreneurship in general. When I started in 2009, people did not even know how to pronounce the word entrepreneur, leave alone spell it. Today it's really cool. People are on Shark Tank. They are raising money. They think that it's supremely fashionable to start your own business, and frankly it is, but it's also intensely hard. And in 2019, I was running this startup called Nearby.com. And it had been acquired by Paytm. We had become profitable. We were doing about 600 crores of sales a year. We were making money. It was genuinely a dream run. I had devoted some 8 or 9 years of my life building that sector and that company. And I decided to step down as the CEO of my own startup, something which is very unnatural or unheard of in the Indian context particularly. I was turning 40 in 2020. Very apt for the theme of the event as well. And I thought that at the age of 40, I want to see what else I could do with my life. So I stepped down as the CEO, and this was towards late 2019. And I decided to take a break for 3 to 6 months, figuring out what I wanted to do. And in those 3 to 6 months, March 2020 happened. And I don't know how many of you remember March 2020, but it was a very wild time. Everything that we thought of ourselves, every plan that we had for our life went out of the window. We had to reimagine ourselves. We were locked up. We were suddenly with our own personality, with our own thoughts, with our own minds, and we were spending time in a close quarter with our best or perhaps worst relationships, and we had no idea what is going to hit us. And in the middle of all of that, as all of us were reimagining their lives, I had to reimagine myself as well. But there's one thing that, for no fault of yours, you would not know, and it always seems like when you are this startup founder, when you're running this really large company, you will be in the money. But that wasn't the case for me. I had a lot of savings because I'd been working for nearly 15, 20 years at that point of time. But all of my savings I had deployed back into my startup, which was Nearby.com. So on paper, I was a millionaire. I owned what was the largest individual stock ownership in the startup, but I had no cash. And most of you who are financial advisors or who have been in the business of making money know that cash is the only real measurement of financial freedom or not. It's not what you own, which you may not even have access to, and so on. So when the lockdown happened, I had no income stream. I had no money in the bank, and I had to reimagine myself from scratch. To give you pure context, I had 5 months of runway. And runway is like this startup term that we use to tell how long does the startup have before it has to wind up or shut down, because that's the money in the bank. So I had 5 months of money in the bank for every expense that we had to bear, which was the school fees of the kids, our home EMI, our daily living expenses, support that I was providing for my parents, all of that. 5 months. And we had no asset to speak of. I was a complete doofus when it came to investing, much different from who I am today. I actually thought that people who made investments in mutual funds and real estate and gold were the biggest losers in the world. Because what they didn't do is invest in the coolest thing ever, startups. Because I was living and dreaming startups every single day, I thought that that is actually the only place where one should invest. And I was so dumb and so foolish to not realize the fallacy of this cocoon that I had built around myself. So again, as I had ownership in my startup nearby, I had ownership in other startups as well, but it didn't amount to anything. I could not draw that money when I really needed it. So all of my net worth was deployed in illiquid assets that I could not, at my own demand, draw out. So I had actually no money. And the only asset we truly had, which could be sold if we could, was our house. So I remember having a conversation with Ruchi, my wife, saying, Ruchi, we have 5 months of money left in the bank. And we have to figure our shit out. Because this could very well be the end. And we could be bankrupt. We technically are already. So here's the plan that I've thought of, and I want to share it with you just to see whether you think it's a good plan or not. We'll give it 3 months. We'll try our best to figure out what we could do. We'll hustle. We'll rediscover, reimagine ourselves, and we'll try and see if we can create another income stream that could support us as a family, and we'll see where that goes. But if nothing happens in those 3 months, we will just have 2 months of money left in the bank. And at that point of time, we have no choice but to sell our house and see what happens. We'd made a down payment of about 50 lakhs for our house. So the hope was we'll at least get that money out. I wasn't expecting anything more. And what I proposed to her was, if we get those 50 lakhs, we'll move to the mountains, we'll homeschool our kids, we will teach in some primary government school, and those 50 lakhs is far more money than we'll ever need to have that kind of life. And are you okay with that? And Ruchi being Ruchi, she was like, I'm really excited at that idea. Not that she was wishing that that would happen, but she was like, you know what, it's not such a bad life, but let's give it our best shot and see where it goes. At that point of time, I had started to actively be on stage. And I have loved public speaking for nearly 20 years, but I used to do it for schools and colleges mostly because that's the kind of crowd I love spending time with. No offense to all of you, but please take offense. I love spending time with young minds. They're just so fresh. They're such challenging the status quo in so many ways, and I'm very hopeful that a lot of you have that same mindset as well. But I'd never seen that as something that could actually become a really big thing, if it amounted to anything at all. And I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine. This is April 2020. And I was telling her that, you know what, the potential income stream of corporate talks is now zero because nobody in their right mind is having any corporate talk in the middle of a lockdown. And she was like, you know what, corporates were paying you money, but what if people could pay you money to actually hear you speak? And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that would happen. And she's like, well, you know what? There's only one way to find out. Why don't you find out? So I started to create these webinars And I don't know if how many of you remember back in March, April, May, June, July of 2020, there was a webinar for anything that you wanted in life. People had so much of time on both sides, creation as well as consumption, that people are like joining these webinars and they were completely free. And there was a webinar on financial planning, a webinar on retirement planning, a webinar on content creation, a webinar on this, a webinar on that. It was just insanely exploding. And I was like, you know what? Let me just throw myself out into the universe as well and see what happens. So for the next 3 months, I conducted 17 webinars. And those 17 webinars were on themes that I knew best. How to hire a team, how to raise money, how to speak effectively, how to manage your time. Things that I had done for my life, I was in complete control of, and I knew that people would benefit from that. But what I didn't know was whether people were willing to pay for it or not. So I had this novel idea, why don't I let them decide if they want to pay or not? Why do I have to decide what should be the price of this? So I ran these 17 webinars on what I call pay what you want pricing model, which was you join that webinar and the only thing you have to do is pay at least 1 rupee. But beyond that, it's your choice what you want to pay. Completely free, or freedom in that sense. And as you would imagine in India, 50% just paid 1 rupee. It's like, that's the best deal ever. But there were 50% who were surprisingly willing to pay more than 1 rupee. And the average came out to about 197 rupees per person, which frankly was more money than I thought somebody was willing to pay for a virtual delivery that they had no idea the content of beforehand, because they had to pay this to reserve their feet. This wasn't after the webinar was over. And that gave me a lot of confidence because I realized that 1, people were actually willing to pay for good quality content. 2, I was not doing half bad a job of delivering that content virtually. And 3, there was enough market if it was priced in the right way for people to consume good quality curated content. And that then became the genesis of what became webveda.com, which is a startup that I run right now. This is not a promotion, it's more of a discovery that I did for nearly 5-6 months before I figured that there was a business case and a model for content creation in an affordable manner that could be dealt in a way that India could consume and hopefully the world at some point of time. But here's the bigger thing that I wanted to talk about. And that is, in those 5 months, I, at all points of time, knew that I was just 1 month away from selling the house that we had, the only asset that we had. And what gave me confidence was, of course, the alignment that I had with my partner that if that were to happen, it's okay. But more importantly, upon reflection, I realized that the biggest thing that helped me was just this insane confidence that I had in me that everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. And that doesn't mean that everything is going to be okay in the sense that I will be one day at the Outlook Money 40 after 40 stage in front of all of you. No. That's far, far away from the okay that I had in mind. My okay was that we're going to have a life where we will have our closest relationships together, where we will have enough financial money to take care of our daily needs. And if I know that I am not the one fighting anymore for the fanciest car and the biggest house and the biggest net worth and to be on any social status game, we're going to be absolutely okay. We're going to absolutely have a wonderful life if we wish to or not. And that brings me to a really interesting story that you may have heard of. There is this famous classic novel called Catch-22. And you may or may not have heard of it, but if you haven't, that doesn't take away anything from the story. The author of Catch-22 and his friend are one day invited to a really fancy party, which is hosted by a gentleman who is the friend of the Catch-22 author. And they're at this massive gathering. Imagine a setup like this, but on a private beach island, and it's fine liquor, it's the fanciest of food, it's the beautiful music and whatnot. And Catch-22 author's friend remarks, you know what? this guy who's invited us for this party, he earns in a day what your entire book has made through selling in its entire lifetime. He earns in a day what you have earned in a lifetime selling this best-selling book that you have. And the author replies, but I have something that he doesn't have. And the friend's like, what could possibly be that you have that this really cool, successful dude doesn't have? And the author replies, I have enough. And I love that. I love the fact that you at some point of time, irrespective of where you are in life, realize that you have enough. Enough to lead a certain life that you want to, enough for the way that you want to live that life. And the art of relying yourself is this discovery of realizing that you have enough. And it has these three components that I wanted to leave you with, because those are frankly the things that helped me in my journey, and I'm sure will help you in yours as well. Number one, and perhaps the biggest thing when you acquire a certain age and a certain mindset and certainly a certain experience, and that is, go back to the day when you joined your current organization, or for those who are, how many of you here are students? Anyone here who's a student? Some of you, okay. How many of you are working professionals? All right, how many of you are running your own business or startup? Awesome, perfect, cool. Well, actually, yeah, one more interesting. How many of you in your 20s? In your 20s? All right, 30s? Okay, and 40 plus? All right, yeah. Good job with the target audience. Yeah, just bang on. I don't know what you're doing. People in your 20s, no, you're also invited. Of course you are. Go back to the first day of college for those in your 20s. Go back to the first day of your current work for those who are working. Go back to the first day when you were in your college, if you remember that day as well. And I'm sure it was an auditorium like this. You were surrounded by different sort of people, all from very different backgrounds. They look differently from you. They dress differently from you. They speak differently from you. They have very different mental makeup from you. They have had very different experience from you, a very different upbringing from you. And I don't know any of you personally, but I guarantee that within the first few hours of you spending time with these very different people, you began to look for people who were like you. You began to look for people who are from the same city as you. You began to look for people who are looking like you, speaking like you, dressed like you, feel like you're the same one, came from the same city or college, from the same department. We love hanging out with people who are like us. We love building this lovely cocoon, this lovely oasis of yours where we're surrounded by people who are like us. And I remember doing that or feeling that when I was at business school. First week of my business school, and there were 330 of us on that batch, and everyone had formed these groups. Everyone was just hanging out with each other, engineers with engineers, chemical with chemical, mechanical with mechanical, IITians with IITians, NIT with NIT, the others with the others, Delhi with Delhi, Sarojini Nagar with Sarojini Nagar, Bombay with Bombay, South Bombay with South Bombay. It's this beautiful groups, communities that we love to hang out with. And in my head, I was like, isn't this the exact opposite of what you should be doing? Like somebody has painstakingly got 330 very different individuals from across the world on a single campus for the next 1 year, and you're going to spend time with the 5 people who are like you? How does that make sense? And the older/wiser you grow, you love these communities even more. Because in your head, there isn't anything outside of this that you want to learn from. Go back to the first day of college or your work. And I assure you that there were, when you were scanning the room, some 2 or 3 people that you looked at and you were like, nahi, not my kinds. Inke saath hang out nahi ho payega. I won't be able to be friends with them. You were so judgmental that you refused to believe that there is anything new that you can learn from them. And surprisingly, the best way to discover yourself or to actually rely on self is to spend time with people who are nothing like you. Nothing like you. Because that's when you truly find out what exists in the world that you had no idea about. Which brings me one of my favorite questions. How many of you here are middle class? Yeah, I knew it. I love the fact that everyone in India is middle class. I love that fact. Irrespective of how big or small the forum is, this is one of my favorite questions in all times. But because this is also a financial inclined exposition, let's ask something which is more specific. What is the definition of middle class in India? What is the definition of middle class in India? Anyone? Throw out a number. Or let me be very specific. What's the monthly salary of middle class Indians? What's the monthly salary of middle class Indians, sir? Sorry? Less than? 20 lakhs a month? A year. Yeah. I was like, sir is middle class at a completely different level. Yeah, I look. The ground floor on Nepean Sea Road is middle class. Yes, sir. 3 lakhs to 12 lakhs is middle class, which is per year, because it's just easier to say per year. So 3 to 12 lakhs, wide range. Almost all of our income tax budget is in that range. 10 lakhs per annum is middle class, sir.
Hello.
30,000 per month is middle class. Anyone else? Let me ask from that crowd. Go ahead. Give me a number. Shout out. 10,000 a month? Okay, is that a wild guess or what? How do you know? Sorry? Oh. He's saying I've attended my session before, so...
Hello. Yeah, Ankur.
Yes.
Roti kapda makan.
Yeah, Shivangi
Yes.
this side.
Roti
So
kapda
basically
makan.
for middle class, it's 25,000, I guess.
25,000?
25,000. And for definition of middle class, I guess balancing the personal and professional life. So it's
Okay, so
all like
35,000 a month, sir.
25,000.
Ankur, one of the similar people like you, he has got a word called F money.
Yes, exactly.
Anybody who doesn't have an F money
Yes, it's middle
is
class.
middle class.
Is middle class.
Yes.
The actual description, sir, is FU money.
Yeah, FU
Because
money.
F money could be very
Yeah.
different. You'll be like dismissing money. So,
So
FU
anyone who
money
doesn't
is
have that is middle class.
perfect. I get that. Awesome. What else? 12,000 a month. Okay. How do you know that? Oh, we follow you. Okay.
Now it is official 12 lakhs in a month. So,
हाँ, because अब income tax नहीं
benefit
देना
is
yeah,
zero.
exactly. Like it's officially
Yes.
now, ma'am is ensured that 12 lakhs per year is now middle class. Okay, great. All answers. Wonderful.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
according to me, 2 lakhs per month. He is a middle class person, but he doesn't have a flat, he's staying on rent.
All right. Perfect. I love the nuance of it as well.
Hello.
Yes, final one. And we don't need more answers. Yes. नहीं देखो मिडिल तो अंग्रेजी में जो मिडिल होता है ना मिडिल मतलब बीच ठीक है उसमें हम दो राहें नहीं करते हैं तो ऐसा नहीं होगा कि नहीं हम अपर मिडिल क्लास ये सब हमारे पूरे श्रृंखलाएं हैं जो हमने अपने लिए बनाई हुई हैं ये दिखाने के लिए कि हम एक्चुअली में मिडिल क्लास हैं बट मिडिल का मतलब मिडिल होता है एवरेज व्हाट इज द एवरेज ऑफ इंडिया सिंपल So the average of India, if this was an economic discussion where you had to actually give an accurate number, is between the ones who have actually attended, it's between 8 to 12,000 rupees a month. It's between 8 to 12,000 rupees a month, which means about 6 to 700 million people in this country are earning more than 8 to 12,000 rupees a month, and 6 to 700 million people, this is per person by the way, so if you add, of course, a household income would be very different, but that would be about 8 to 12,000. Now, the reason I state that is because if you were to say, hey, I am middle class, but I'm earning 2 lakhs a month and I'm on rent, you would have a very different impression of what middle class is from somebody who's perhaps sitting here and saying, I'm actually earning 12,000 rupees a month and I'm middle class. The middle class in India is the Uber and the Ola driver, not you. You're all rich. You just don't know it. Just because you see Ambani's wedding at Jamnagar doesn't make you poor. You have to recognize this is no comparison, it's an absolute. All of you are rich. The fact that you came to this place makes you rich. The fact that you can even think of retirement as a concept makes you rich. Because that's a point of privilege that most people don't even have. What is retirement? I have to pay for my money and my food. So there is no concept of retirement. But here is like FIRE, FU money, or F money, or whatever money. The truth is, this is not middle class India. The point that I'm making is, please step out of your cocoon. Step out of the world that you're living in. Step out of the corners that you engulf yourself with. Step out of the social media content that you're consuming, because that is never going to tell you anything that challenges your point of view. When you open up Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, it doesn't tell you, oh, you're wrong. No, it tells you, you're right, bro. You're absolutely right. Here is the video. Whatever you believe in, here it is. Everything that they believe in isn't wrong. Here is another video. It just convinces you that your point of view is the only point of view and the right point of view. So only when you step out do you actually begin to see what the world has to offer. And that's the first step of relying on yourself. Because until you don't do that, you're just in love with the identity that you have. And you have to break that identity. If I ask you, what do you do? And you give me a designation at a company, that's the most pitiful existence you could have. Because that's the only construct in your mind that is worth talking about. If you ask me, what do I do? I'm like, how much time do you have? Because I could go on and on about all the things that I do, and that's nothing to do with just my career. It's to do with my hobbies. It's to do with what I do as a person, as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a brother, as a friend. That all is where you need to be. Which brings me to the second point. A lot of us, as we get experience, start to become intellectually comfortable. We love getting comfortable. We love being in that spot where we can send the email, the work's done. Pick up the phone, the work's done. Walk up to someone, the work's done. My favorite question during an interview is, how many years of experience do you have? And people are like, I have 5 years of experience. I'm like, great. Is that 5 years of experience, or is that 1 year of experience done 5 times? And that's a huge difference. And a lot of us just love, oh, I've been doing the same thing, but I'm just so good with it that I can do it in my sleep. I've been doing it for 12 plus years now. I have 12 years experience. No, bro, 1 year experience multiplied by 12. Very different. What happens then is you believe that the goal of life is to make life comfortable. What we begin to believe, and the world endorses outside, is that comfort is the only goal we're looking for. Because think about it. Everything around the world today is designed for our comfort. You need a book, click. Clothes, click. You need cabs, click. Food, click. Grocery, click. 2 minutes. Ting, ting. Blinkit, Zepto, just there at your doorstep. So you're convinced that the purpose of life is to make life comfortable, which is great from a physical comfort perspective. Please make your life comfortable. Please get a good mattress. Please get a safe car. Please get lovely shoes. But we don't recognize when it begins to extend to our intellectual comfort, where we're just not challenging ourselves, where we're not thinking outside of what we could be doing because it scares us. It scares us because we're scared of losing. We're scared of falling and failing in front of a crowd and be embarrassed by what they would think of us. We're scared of losing the only identity that we know of because that's just so comfortable. It's wonderful to be in that identity. Don't get comfortable. Don't get comfortable. Because the day you get intellectually comfortable, you are numbing yourself to any level of growth that you could have witnessed in your life, but will never experience. And then the third and the final point that makes that happen. How many of you here have kids between 10 and 20? 10 and 20 years. Yeah, so some of you do. And we had a show of hands of people who are in their 20s as well. It's a very, very different era that we are raising our kids in. And every single day, I don't think there is any hour that passes by where somebody of our generation is complaining about Gen Zs. Impatient, privileged, they have everything, but yet they are so confused. हमारे ज़माने में हम पैदल स्कूल जाते थे, नदियाँ पार करके जाते थे, मगरमच्छ के साथ जाते थे. आज वो एसी बस में जा रहे हैं और उनको पसीने क्या होता है पता ही नहीं है. क्या होगा इनका, कैसे ये जिएंगे, सब कुछ फोन पे ही करते रहते हैं, पेन से कभी लिखना ही नहीं सीखा है, आता ही नहीं है स्पेलिंग क्या होती है, कौन कौन से शब्द यूज करते रहते हैं. It's just insane how we think that this generation is completely doomed. What we've forgotten is how our parents used to think about us. Because our parents were convinced that we are also doomed. And here is a very important lesson. Recognize why this difference is happening so that you get to the point that I'm trying to make. Most of us who are in our 30s, 40s, and beyond, we grew up in an India where for everything, we had to wait. For everything, we had to wait. If you wanted to buy a watch, you had to wait. If you wanted to buy a phone connection, you had to wait. If you wanted to buy a scooter or a car, you had to wait. You had to stand in line to get milk. You had to stand in line to get a bus pass. You were basically standing in line for everything. You wanted to hear your favorite Hindi songs? Wednesday, 7 p.m. Chitrahar. That's the only time you get it. And most of you in Bombay are just pampered, but in Delhi, there was no electricity mostly on Wednesday, 7 p.m.s. So if there was no electricity, sorry bro, the next time you get to hear your favorite Hindi movie song is next week. There's nothing on demand. And suddenly, this generation is born in a different India, where everything is available at the speed of thought. As I said, you need a book, click. You need clothes, click. They have no concept that there was a time in our lives where to change the channel, we had to get up, walk to the TV, and turn the knob. Like they don't understand. What, really? You were that poor? They don't understand that when there was white noise on the television, someone would then climb up to the roof and do some juggling which was almost acrobatic and then shout out the words, "Aa gaya!" Because that was our way of getting television. They're like, "Ma, Baba, aap kis zamane mein reh rahe the?" They have everything at their disposal right now. So for no fault of this generation, they believe that if they want something, they can get it right now. And it's not shocking then that I'm speaking to a 22 or a 23-year-old, and this, by the way, is a true story, happens almost every day again. And I'll be like, "How's it going?" And they'll be like, "I've just started this job और मजा ही नहीं आ रहा." I'm like, "क्यों, क्या हुआ?" I'm like, "I'm not able to create impact." I'm like, "कितना time हुआ काम करते हुए?" I'm like, "I've been on this job for 6 months and I haven't been able to create any impact." And I was like, "किसने तुझे बोला कि 6 महीने में impact create होता है? क्योंकि यहाँ लोग 60 साल से लगे हुए हैं, वो शायद impact नहीं create कर पाए हैं." But in their head, if they want to create impact, it should happen. It's on demand. If they want to get promoted, it should happen. It's on demand. If they want to become successful, it's on demand. And that is why the impatience. It's not their fault. It's not ours either. But it's very important to recognize why it happens. And the only way that you will recognize why something happens if you ask, "Why is this happening?" Instead of dismissing it, that it happens and it's not aligned with your point of view. And the surest way of ensuring that you ask questions of why things happen is to become a student. And unfortunately, particularly in our culture, we stop being a student after college. And we are now just a student because we are told to do something. We don't do things out of our will. We're not students by will. We're students by compulsion. So if our bosses tell us, "Go and discover this new thing that you have to do because that's the only way you'll get promoted," we will do that. But we will never pick up something new out of our own will. And if we do, the first thing that we do is announce it to the world. So go back to any new thing that you were learning in the last 6 months or something, if you have at all. And again, I'm very sure that after the first 2 or 3 classes of you learning it, you announce it to the world that I'm learning this new thing. It's so bizarre for me. Like तुमने अभी सीखना शुरू किया है. तो इस बात पे क्या वाहवाहियां कर रहे हो कि तुम कुछ नया सीख रहे हो? जब सीख जाओगे तब करना। हमने कभी स्कूल में तो नहीं बोला ना ब्रो, फिजिक्स न्यूटन्स लॉ शुरू कर दिया हमने, सेकंड लॉ पे हूं मैं, अब सीख रहा हूं। नो, वी वर नेवर प्राउड अबाउट दैट, बट वी आर प्राउड अबाउट दीज थिंग्स बिकॉज वी वॉन्ट टू शो टू द वर्ल्ड कि हम कुछ सीख रहे हैं। हम सीखने के लिए नहीं सीख रहे हैं, हम दिखाने के लिए सीख रहे हैं। And that is not, in my opinion, true learning. True learning is when you're learning something and nobody in your world knows that you're learning something. That is when you're truly devoted to that art of learning. So when you combine these three things, spending time with people who are nothing like you so that it broadens your horizon, doing it in a manner that you are never intellectually comfortable, that you're constantly challenging yourself, and always remaining a student, you basically have the mechanism for relying on yourself forever and ever. Nothing is going to destroy your life because you will always know that I'm enough, that I have enough, that I don't need more to prove to somebody else. I can make do with what I have. And this is the way that you should be convinced about it. How many of you have been to a casino regularly? Okay. Just checking. Okay, so I've started this new casino, and I'm happy that Outlook Money has given me the platform to talk about this. Thank you. This is without paying any money. This casino doesn't matter where it is. It's called Warikoo Casino because I couldn't come up with another name. It has only one game in it, but it's a fascinating game. Here's how you play it. Irrespective of the amount you bet, you will always lose 90% of the times. You'll always lose 90% of the times. But the beauty is, you will know the maximum that you will lose and never below that. There is a cap on the loss that you will have. So it's never going to be the case that you will lose an infinite amount. You will always know the amount that you will maximum lose. It will be known before you play. But you will lose 90% of the times. However, the 10% time that you win, you can win any amount. Any amount. It could be a life-changing amount. It could be an amount that you will never have to ever work in your life again. And that's the game. You play, 90% of the times you lose, but your losses are capped. 10% you win, and your wins are not capped. They could be infinite. And my question to you is, how many times will you play that game? And I'll give you my answer. If such a game existed, I would play it every single day of my life. I would play that every single day of my life. And the beauty is, this is exactly the game of life. This is exactly the game that all of us are in the middle of. All of you middle-class people, the truth is your losses are capped. Because of your parents' hard work and your own hard work, you are never going to be ever on the streets. You're never going to die of hunger or poverty. You're never going to have a day when you don't even know where your next meal is going to come from. You're never going to have a day where you don't know whether you will have clothes to wear or not. Your losses are capped. In fact, the only loss is notional in your head. कि लोग क्या कहेंगे? अगर मेरी वो लंबी गाड़ी छोटी हो गई तो फिर लोगों की नजरों में मैं गिर जाऊंगा. अगर मेरे पास वो सोने जवाहरात नहीं होंगे तो लोग मेरे बारे में क्या सोचेंगे? अगर मेरी ये डेजिग्नेशन नहीं होगी तो लोग मुझ पे हंसेंगे. The loss is completely notional in your head. It doesn't factually exist because it is no threat to your life. It's just a threat to your identity. But if you were to win, any one of you here could be anything you want. If you were to win, you could create a destiny for yourself that could change not just your orbit, but the orbit of the next 7 generations to follow. It's just that win that you have to wake up for every day. And that will be that game of life that you should be willing to play. Because if not, then you will just be caught up in the next corpus amount, the next investment asset, the next mutual fund, the next crypto, the next real estate boom. And it's just so mindless. That chase, that you don't even realize it's taking away 1 day of your time meaninglessly without giving you anything in return. So what I would love is to bank on the only asset you truly have, yourself. Irrespective of the day, the time, irrespective of the difficulty, irrespective of how you feel that you're stuck and you have nowhere to move, there's always one asset that can get you out of that. And that is your belief in your own self. And unless you don't believe that, nobody else is going to believe in you. Unless you don't believe that you are enough to make shit happen and get you out of shit, nobody will believe in you. Anupam Kher had this talk show where he used to invite celebrities, and the first one was Shah Rukh Khan. I think so, if not the first one, one of the first few. And Anupam Kher asked Shah Rukh Khan, "Shah Rukh, आप इतने successful कैसे हैं?" And Shah Rukh Khan says, "Sir, मैं मेहनत बहुत करता हूँ." And you can see the look on Anupam Kher's face because he's like, "Bro, तुझे लगा मैं गंजा हो गया और मैंने मेहनत नहीं करी क्या?" Like, मेहनत तो सभी लोग करते हैं ना. After a certain point of time, that's not something that you say. It's not like really cool. But of course, Anupam Kher ji is a diggaj insan, so he was very respectful about it. It's like, "Shah Rukh, मेहनत तो सभी करते हैं. तो आपकी मेहनत में अलग क्या है?" And he says something which I believe is the best lesson one can have in life. He says, "Sir, मौका पाने के लिए हर एक इंसान मेहनत करता है. मौका पाने के लिए हर एक इंसान मेहनत करता है. Everybody works hard to get an opportunity. लेकिन मौका पाने के बाद मुझसे ज़्यादा मेहनत कोई नहीं कर सकता. Nobody can work harder once I've got the opportunity. And I love him for that. He may be the world's, and I'm sure he's listening at Mannat. He may be whatever it is, you may like him as an actor, you may not, but what I love about Shah Rukh Khan, and this isn't about him, but about his ideology, is that he is convinced that he is good. And because he's convinced he is good, he automatically draws a lot of people who believe that he is good. And I think that Shah Rukh Khan exists in all of us, and should. Because if we stand in front of the mirror every day, and we are convinced that we have it within us to make things happen, then you don't need the session. You don't need me, you don't need Outlook money, you don't need any investment advice. You'll figure your way out because you're enough. And you know that you have everything within your capacity and agency to make things happen. And on that note, I wish 2025 for that year to be for you. Thank you.